Stop scrolling. Seriously, stop. Because the thing you're looking at right now, this tie, this small, forgotten piece of silk, is why a grown man sat in his empty apartment and cried for 3 solid hours. This tie isn't just a fashion accessory. It's the single reason my whole family stopped talking to him. And it's the only reason I wrote a 2-sentence note that essentially forced him to restart his entire life. This is the story of how my mother's tie got pawned for $50 and how I returned it with a message that was worth more than $1 million. And you need to stick around until the very end, because the real secret, the hidden truth about this specific piece of silk, changes everything about the story you think you know. The tie belonged to my mother, which sounds weird, right? A man's tie belonging to a woman. But my mom, she was a legend. She ran a small tailoring business back in the day. She didn't just sell ties, she designed them. She saw them as these little wearable pieces of art. And this one was hers. It was the only tie she ever made just for herself. She wore it once, maybe twice, to the biggest events of her life. Her favorite silk, a special knot she invented. After she passed away 4 years ago, I put it in a small wooden box. It was the only thing I kept from her clothes. It smelled faintly of her perfume and the old steam from her shop. It was my anchor. It was the last piece of her. The story starts about 6 months ago. The tie was gone. I remember the moment I knew. I was having a terrible day. Work was a mess, my car wouldn't start, and I just needed a minute. I went into my closet, reached for the box, and my hand hit nothing but wood. My heart skipped. The box was there, sitting exactly where I'd left it, but it was empty. Not broken, not forced, just empty. I tore the room apart. I checked the drawers, under the bed, inside the safe. Nothing. I felt sick, like I'd lost her all over again. I didn't think theft. Who steals a tie? It wasn't covered in diamonds. It was just a memory. That's what made it so devastating. Only someone who knew exactly where it was and knew how little financial worth it had to a stranger could have taken it. And there was only one person who fit that description. Mark. Mark is my uncle, my mother's younger brother. He was always a complicated person. Huge heart, zero discipline. He struggled with things, life, money, and lately something darker. We'd been trying to help him for years, loans, rent, advice, but nothing stuck. He had just moved in with me, a last-ditch effort to get him back on his feet. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe he'd changed. So when the tie went missing, I felt a horrible, cold dread. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I checked his room. Not the drawers, not the closet. I checked the one spot a person who was trying to hide a quick, awful mistake would look. Under his mattress. It was a pawn slip, dated 2 days ago. Item description: used men's silk neckwear. Amount received? $50. $50! My mother's memory, the closest I had to her touch, reduced to $50. The betrayal wasn't about the money. It was the cold, calculated choice to trade the one thing I cherished for a fleeting $50. The selfishness of it was a physical punch to the gut. I stood there holding that little piece of paper, and I felt nothing but a blinding, white-hot fury. I could have walked into his room right then. I could have screamed. I could have thrown him out of my house and ended everything right there. I thought about it. Oh, I thought about it. But a weird calmness settled over me. I looked at the slip again, and I saw the address. Gold Standard Pawn, 3 blocks away. I knew I had to get the tie back first. The confrontation could wait. The tie couldn't. The pawn shop smelled like old leather, desperation, and dust. I walked right up to the counter. There was a guy there, a big man with tired eyes. I slammed the slip down. I said, "I need to redeem this item. Pawn slip 7749. He barely looked up. He took the slip, mumbled the number, and went into the back. He came out a minute later holding the tie. My tie. It was in a plastic bag, crumpled and sad. It looked so wrong, so cheap, sealed in that clear plastic. I paid the $50, plus the interest, about $53.50 without a word. I had the tie back. That should have been the end of it. The moment I walked out of that shop, I planned to call a locksmith, change the locks, and leave Mark's bags on the porch. But something stopped me. I pulled the tie out of the plastic bag and straightened it. And that's when the second wave of shock hit. Not the emotional one, a factual one. Remember I told you my mom was a legend? She taught me everything about textiles. And as I held the tie, feeling the familiar weight, I remembered something she said once, a long, long time ago. She pointed out a tiny, almost invisible imperfection in the silk's weave. She told me, this only happens in one type of silk, harvested in one specific region in Italy. It's not a flaw, really. It's a signature. I dismissed it back then, but holding it now, with the memory of the $50 pawn tag fresh, in my mind, a wild thought took root. Could this single piece of cloth be more than just sentimental? The next 4 days were a blur. I didn't sleep. I canceled everything. I was on a mission. The tiny imperfection I saw was my starting point. I typed the description into every textile archive, every museum database. I searched for vintage Italian flawed silk and Naples weave. Nothing for a long time, just dead ends and dry historical documents. But I'd seen the other stories. The guy who pawned his family watch for $1,000, only to find out it was a prototype worth $100 million. The woman who sold an old coin collection for $3,000 that was actually worth $5 million. People make mistakes, huge, life-altering mistakes. Even the so-called professionals at the pawn shop make them. On the fourth day, I found it, hidden in a collector's forum that hadn't been updated since 2005. A post titled, The Forgotten Tie. The silk wasn't just Naples weave. It was from a batch of silk that had been accidentally contaminated with a specific rare metallic thread in the 1960s. The company salvaged the thread, but scrapped the silk batch. One designer, a Reaganade, my mom's old mentor it turned out, bought the scrap lot and made exactly a dozen pieces. Scarves, pocket squares, and one single prototype tie, the tie my mother made for herself. The metallic thread was so fine, so rare, that it not just looked special, under UV light, it glowed a faint seafoam green. It was, essentially, a piece of textile history. An auction house in London had a standing six-figure offer for any verifiable item from that batch. This tie wasn't a $50 memory. This tie was easily worth $100,000. Minimum. $100,000. Pawned for $50? My rage disappeared. It was replaced by this heavy, unsettling weight. Mark didn't just steal from me, he threw away a family heirloom, a piece of textile history, and a fortune, all for a quick, desperate fix. He was in a hole so deep, he couldn't even see the actual value in front of his face. He was drowning. And then I realized, my original plan, the screaming, the kicking him out of my house, it wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't help him. It would just destroy him. He'd be back on the street and he'd find another desperate thing to do. The cycle would continue. I decided the tie's secret needed to be the lever, the thing that finally broke the pattern. My plan had 3 steps. Step 1, no shouting. Step 2, return the tie, not to me, but to him. Step 3, write the note. The note had to be perfect. It couldn't be a threat. It had to be a mirror. It had to show him what he truly traded away. I sat there for an hour, drafting it in my head. Dear Mark, I got the tie back. It cost me $53.50. You pawned a piece of your sister's memory for a fix? Too aggressive. Mark, this tie is worth $100,000. Look what you lost. Too focused on the money. He'd just see a new way to screw up. I finally found the right words. Simple, direct, unforgiving, but offering a chance. A single, small piece of paper. I folded it twice. I took the tie, straightened it one last time, making sure that one faint metallic flaw was visible, and I went into his room. He wasn't there. Good. I didn't leave it on his bed. Too easy to ignore. I hung the tie on the hook of his closet door, the knot perfectly tied, the special knot my mother taught him when he was a boy. Then I placed the note. It was short, just 2 sentences really, with a short addition at the bottom. This is what I wrote. The note read, I paid $53.50 to get this back. It was never about the money. Check the auction site for lot number 6642. Don't pawn the life she gave you too. I walked out of that room and shut the door behind me. I didn't lock it. I didn't wait. I went to the living room and sat down, my whole body shaking. I had fired the shot. Now I just had to wait for the blast. I knew that note was going to change his life. I just didn't know how. Was it going to make him furious? Was he going to deny it? Or was it going to be the mirror he finally couldn't avoid? I waited for 2 hours. Silence. Then 3. I heard the front door open. He was home. I didn't move. I heard him walk down the hall. I heard his door open. Then nothing. Complete, absolute silence. No shouting, no sound of him dropping his bags. Just that heavy, dead quiet. I could almost picture him standing there, seeing the tie, reading the note, seeing that number, that auction lot, that final desperate plea about the life my mother wanted for him. And then I heard it. Not shouting, not anger, a choked sound, then another. And then he was sobbing. Full, body-shaking, ragged sobs that went on and on. It wasn't the sound of a man who lost a fortune. It was the sound of a man who realized the true weight of what he had done. It was the moment the scale finally tipped. I didn't go in. I couldn't. He didn't need me. He needed that moment alone with the tie and the truth. He finally came out about 4 hours later. He looked awful, red-eyed, his clothes were messy. He didn't come to the living room. He came to the kitchen where I was pretending to read a book. And he stood there for a full minute, unable to look me in the eye. Mark said, I'm sorry. I said, I know. Mark said, I didn't know about the tie. I needed the 50. It was 50 or I just needed it. I said, and you went for the easiest thing, the thing that cost you the least amount of money, but the highest price emotionally. He nodded, tears starting up again. Mark said, the auction site. I checked it. I saw the value. You didn't tell anyone. I said, I didn't tell anyone. It's still here. It's not worth $100,000 to me. It's worth a memory. If you wanted the cash, you could have asked me. You chose the pawn shop. You chose the disrespect. You chose to trade our mother's history for a quick escape. That was the turning point. The tie's financial worth didn't make him apologize. It was the final sentence of the note. Don't pawn the life she gave you too. It wasn't about the silk. It was about his soul. We talked for hours that night. I didn't forgive him immediately. Forgiveness is a path, not a one-time event. But the note and the hidden secret of the tie gave him the rock-bottom moment he needed. It showed him he wasn't just broke. He was blind to the world's actual potential, too blind to see the fortune hanging right in his closet, yet clear-sighted enough to toss it away for a petty fix. What happened next? It's not a magic movie ending. It was hard, but he called a professional. He started working to fix his situation. He took the tie, not to sell it for the $100,000, but to keep it. He told me it was the only thing that made him feel connected to the truth that even when you think you're completely worthless, there is hidden worth in you that you can't see. He framed the note too. It's a constant reminder. The tie is now safely locked away, not for its financial security, but as a monument to a moment of change. Mark is doing better now. It's a day-by-day effort. And me? I learned that sometimes the most generous thing you can do for someone who hurts you is not to punish them, but to give them the one thing they don't deserve, the unvarnished truth about themselves, presented with a chance at a new beginning. I took the story of the $100 million pawn mistake and applied it to a personal $50 betrayal. And that simple comparison was enough to pull him out of the darkness. So, if you take anything away from this story, let it be this. Look closer at the things people dismiss. That old item in your closet, that worn-out photograph, that seemingly unimportant memory, even the person you think is hopeless. Sometimes the most incredible world-changing value, the secret worth, is hidden in plain sight, just waiting for someone to hold it under the right light. And that, more than any tie, is the true meaning of the word family.